Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. Among the perennial issues concerned with friendship or love or relationships that Aristotle examines in Nicomachean Ethics, Book 8, is one that is still on a lot of people's minds today. I think every single generation has to work through and work out their own solution to this. Oftentimes the solutions end up looking very much like what past thinkers have come up with, like what Aristotle is going to tell us here. And this question is, can a person have many friends? I think that this is a particularly interesting and acute issue in the present, given the proliferation of social media through the internet and through mobile technology, because Facebook calls itself a community which is composed of all these relationships of friends. And we can say that, well, Google Plus and LinkedIn and Twitter, they don't do that. They have following or, connections. But it's really, the same sort of question about what's going on with those connections. Same thing, I suppose. I don't even know what happens with Instagram because I'm not on that. But in any case, it's a real live question. Even before social media, believe it or not, human beings existed without that for most of their history. This is still a major issue. Can a person have many friends? And correlate to that would be, well, should a person try to have many friends, or should a person just try to have a few friends? Is it a good thing to have more friends than to have less friends? And if we think about this in an Aristotelian perspective, this is why Aristotle's analysis is so useful. There is an ambiguity involved here. We're not asking about something that means the same thing in every situation. Friendship has a wide range of meaning. It has, as I put here, multiple senses. So, Aristotle doesn't just distinguish between these three types of friendship that I've shot another video about and actually done separate videos about each of these. He also talks about mixed or unequal relationships. He also talks about the family, relatives, all sorts of other people who we have relationships with, whether we really like it or not. We're sort of, we come into the fabric of that, whereas these tend to be voluntary connections that we make. And notice that even with those, we have three main types that Aristotle is going to distinguish, putting aside the mixed or unequal relationships. We have friendships of virtue, based on who the person is, and you can only have this kind of friendship if you really do have virtue to offer, and if the other person has virtue to offer. We have friendships that are based on pleasure, the pleasure that perhaps the people provide each other, or the pleasure that they take in associating and enjoying a common thing. And then we have friendships of utility. And Aristotle will tell us that there's a couple factors that make it impossible for us to have many friends in terms of virtue. First of all is the fact that there aren't a lot of virtuous people to begin with, but it requires time, a lot of time to spend with that person to get to find out whether they are indeed virtuous and to build up that friendship. We can have friends, we can have many more friends who are friendships of pleasure because it's easier to tie into that. You want to know whether it's pleasant to spend time with somebody. You don't need to know them for months on end. You can tell fairly quickly whether you actually enjoy spending time with them. And although they might lie to you, of course, they can probably give you some sort of indication whether they enjoy spending time with you as well. So it's quite possible to have many friends in terms of pleasure. You could be on a sports team, for example, and be friends in that sense with everybody on the team. At least if you like spending time together. The people that you hang out with can be friendships in terms of pleasure. You could be part of a social club. There's all sorts of possibilities that widen the scope. And I think in terms of social media, because we now live in a virtual world, case in point, I'm talking to you right here, right? We can widen that even more so that people who lived in areas where perhaps they couldn't find that many people that they could enjoy things with can now do so. Friendships in terms of utility, we can have all sorts of friends in terms of utility. We don't need to know them very well. We're not particularly interested in their character, except that we don't want them to screw us over or deprive us of whatever good it is that we want. They may not even be pleasant to be with. Lots of people can fit the bill for this. And you don't need any time necessarily to figure that out. You may not even need to know much about the person other than their bio to tell whether they're going to be useful for you. And then we, of course, have the mixed or unequal relationships, the family relationships. That adds other new wrinkles to it. You might have more family, you might have less family, right? But if we're considering whether we can have many friends or whether it's a good thing to have many friends, as we move through these, the situation changes. Now, of course, friendships based on pleasure and utility are not as lasting as friendships based on virtue. So it could be that it's sort of a rotating door thing. You think about people with their romantic or erotic relationships. We talk about people as being serial monogamous. That means that they go from one relationship where they're in a committed relationship, breaks up, another relationship breaks up, another relationship. Obviously, in that sense, you can't have that many friendships of pleasure, but at the same time that you have that, you may also have your sports team, you may have your social club, you may have your circle of friends, you may have all sorts of other things going on, right? So it is quite possible to have many more friends. The more superficial, the less personal, in the sense of being about the persons themselves, the relationship turns out to be. And we can represent that graphically here. I'm not a great graphic artist, so of course you're going to have to sort of see what I'm talking about here. We have sort of like a pyramid, you might say, and depending on where we locate ourselves, the answer is yes or no. If we locate ourselves at the top, where virtue exists, that's assuming that we actually have any virtue to offer the other person. It's maybe a foreclosed possibility for some people, but that's also why mixed or unequal relationships are important. It could be that you offer pleasure or usefulness to the other person who has virtue. But you still can't have a lot of friendships of virtue because it takes so long. And these are relatively rare. So you can't have a lot of friends in the fullest sense of friendship. It's just not possible from an Aristotelian perspective. As a matter of fact, it's not even desirable, because by spreading yourself out too thin, you don't have enough time and energy to devote to that one or two or three very close friends. Friendship in terms of pleasure, okay, we can have more people involved there. We can share it with a lot wider range of persons because more people can fit the bill, and it doesn't take as long to develop. As a matter of fact, when they quit being pleasant, they'll shuffle off the scene and we'll find somebody else to replace them. Friendships of utility at the bottom, yes. Can a person have many friends? Absolutely. You can have as many friends as you want. And again, to talk in terms of social networks, Facebook cuts you off at 500. And I actually do know some people who have 500 friends on Facebook. Whatever they may think about how they're connected with these people, those are not friendships of virtue. They may, in fact, know some of those people outside of Facebook, probably do, may have known them for a long time, but there's no way that they're spending, enough time with 5,000 people to be friends of virtue with them. Probably it's not even a matter of pleasure in a lot of cases. Probably it's just what we would call usefulness. Some people get a kick out of having a lot of friends. Some people enjoy, working the connections. That's less about pleasure and more about utility, right? And so, the wider your range of friends, the more things are happening down in here. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Aristotle doesn't say that there's anything wrong with this. As a matter of fact, the main thing that Aristotle seems to be concerned about is distinguishing between these and saying, look, if you're going to have very close friends, don't mix them up with these people, because friendships of those sorts don't work the same way. So to answer the question, can a person have many friends? Well, yes and no. It depends on where you fit in with this and what sense of the term you're using for friends. It may be that some people don't have any friends in terms of virtue, and it's all down here, and they appear to have lots and lots and lots of friends. Talk about people like that as being popular, and quite often people like that are not super happy because they don't have this upper level thing. Sometimes people pretend that people in these classes are the BFFs, the best friends forever of virtue, but if you don't have what it takes to have that relationship, that's not going to actually last. So these are all very important things to keep in mind.